We are on a mission to save and revitalize independent pharmacy.
On the Catalyst Pharmacy podcast, you'll get actionable business advice.
Hear stories from industry leaders.
And share a laugh or two with us.
Fuel your passion for pharmacy.
One conversation at a time.
Welcome to the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Key, and today I'm here with my co-host, Marsha.
Hi, I'm your host, Marsha Bivins, Director of Marketing for PioneerRx. We are joined by NCPA CEO Doug Hoey and also RedSail CEO Kraig McEwen. Guys, welcome.
So Doug, we're running a social experiment. Are you a clean garage freak?
I like my garage to be in order, and so it's the one.
So that's a yes.
Yeah, it's one
Everything
of the
has a
few-
place, and I want it in that place.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you.
And crap gets dumped in my garage. It's one of the. We moved from a house to another house like 15 years ago, and in that move, I had a little office in the old house. I didn't have an office in the new house. So basically, I'm a nomad. I have a bed and I have, but that's basically it. So my garage is my domain. So when people throw their crap in there, I do notice it. And I'm like, throw your crap elsewhere.
I think we should, for the podcast, we should show his reaction when you said that, because I think in like slow motion, because there was a visual. He could have not said a word, and we knew his answer from what his face did when you said you like an organized garage.
I'm a car guy. I love cars.
Oh, nice.
You are.
Oh, I love cars.
What's your favorite car?
I like the vintage stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, I've Firebirds.
My
not
dad
Camaros,
has a
but Firebirds.
What's your favorite year?
68.
My dad has a 78 T-top.
78. So I had an 84 in high school that I bought working at the pharmacy and selling my baseball cards. But
And you had, so past tense?
Well, it's 84. So I mean, that poor car, by the time I was done with it, had been in the shop more than it had been on the road. I had some misfortunes as a driver. Firebirds don't get around well on ice and snow, as it turns out.
Yes, you can see that.
No, they don't.
Yeah. It took me more than once to figure that out as a 17 and 18-year-old, but I got the message.
That'll be the title of today's episode. Firebirds don't get around well on ice.
So my mom saved up for a car, and she had the car picked out. And so my dad, my grandpa, took her money and went and bought the car that she wanted, and it was that 78 Firebird, the T-top. And it used to be silver. And that's the one they still have today. My dad bought it off my mom, and he's painted it red. He's already had the engine rebuilt once. But yeah, he still has it.
Is it a Firebird or a Trans Am?
It's a Firebird.
Okay, so it's not the Burt Reynolds, Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am, it's the Firebird, which I actually liked more. The Trans Am over the top was a little more over the top. My brother had a 76 Firebird.
Yeah.
So one of my older brothers, so that's another reason I liked him, is because he would occasionally let me ride with him, not drive it, of course, but ride with him.
Yeah, of course.
And as a 13-year-old, getting to go to high school with your senior in high school brother driving his 76 Firebird that he earned from working, making money as at the pharmacy. That was a cool thing.
Yeah.
To
See, it's kind of like I feel having a podcast with Doug. See, feel like a little 13-year-old riding to high school with his big brother.
I loved spring and summer times when my dad would take the T-tops off and I'd ride in the back seat when I was little.
Oh yeah, the things we did and lived.
I think Jeff is actually trying to steer the conversation
back to work.
The topic
Yes,
at hand.
business.
I mean, it was a fairly polite segue, but I
let's
think
not talk steering in pharmacy. That's not
Yeah.
we see it all the time. We're just not the ones that get to do it. For sure.
So I told him, so we're having air conditioner problems here. This is a public service announcement. So if you see beads of sweat rolling down my face, it has nothing to do with the questions that you asked. So
Jeff's just menopausal.
just a clarification as I start to sweat here.
Yeah. Do you drink your hot coffee?
No, it's ice water.
It's ice water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I have iced tea.
You pour it over your head. I won't take note.
Yeah.
Won't think
I pour
twice
it on
about
a rag and rub it around.
Then we have a and then it becomes a flash dance podcast.
If I start doing it. Yeah.
Flash dance, yeah.
Hey, that's a picture.
Yeah.
First,
Yeah,
when
you're a
there's
maniac.
You're on your own on
Maniac.
that.
but a slow.
All right, so this is our 6-month check-in
Yeah.
with the Grand Pumbaa.
And I have 1,000 questions for you, but this is your time today, so we're going to try to let you
This is your podcast.
run with it.
You are the host.
We have to have one in the middle. We have to do one at 3 months where we ask Doug questions because so many cool stuff going on in NCPA.
Well, I mean,
I know, I've got a bunch I'd love to ask Doug today.
So we'll see. So
well-
ask us fast, Doug, because you're probably a lot more interesting than we are.
Well, we'll see about that. So yeah, the disclaimer for all of these is that you guys invite me to switch things around and for me to be the host for your show, and anything goes. So if people haven't heard some of these questions, maybe, as a host, you may be like, man, this guy's a jerk. Why is he asking such questions
I
like
know.
this?
I looked back at some of the stuff you asked last time. I was like, oh, Doug's not my friend. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, actually, in all honesty, in everything, this is actually a very popular. This is one of our most popular episodes, and people get to find out, what all we've accomplished and where all we plan to go.
Good.
And what people are thinking. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Fair enough. So
you could
prep
say
for
this episode is by popular request.
Great. Good. Yeah. I'm thrilled people have time to listen to it. I did listen to, just in prep for this, I listened to maybe not your last 4 podcasts, but I went through 4 podcasts
Okay.
leading up to this. So I may have some references to some of those
Cool.
podcasts from before. Yeah, they're actually pretty. And I forced myself to listen to the last one that we did because I don't like. It's kind of like watching game film of yourself. It's kind of
Does anybody not like hearing their own voice on recordings? Because I'm that person.
Yeah, right here, this one.
Yeah.
So just to kind of, I'm same way, Kraig. Just to sort of kick things off a little bit. So we've got the NCPA annual meeting coming up very soon. And Jeff, you, Pioneer's been kind enough to support one of the general sessions, and you always speak. What you're planning? Are you planning to do that again this year? I mean, I know you're sponsoring it. Are you planning to do your presentation again this year?
yes, and it's not ready yet, but
So I
it
don't
will
know if
be.
anyone's. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's. Can you tell us a little bit about that preparation? Because I don't know if. I'm sure folks watching this podcast have probably seen Jeff. He's a pretty good speaker. And I don't say that to blow, smoke up your chimney. I probably just wouldn't say anything if you weren't any good. Well, what's your prep like?
Can I answer this one?
sure, you can go ahead.
So Jeff's prep work on any of his speeches, I've got to experience. He'll read about 2 or 3 different books, and then he'll get some ideas and some quotes, and he'll pull those out and go, I like that. I'm going to use that. And then he starts formulating, this is the story I'm going to use because it'll go perfect with this quote. And then he starts writing it. And he gets his word count because he goes, I know this word count gets me this many minutes. And then he memorizes a paragraph at a time. And once he goes through it perfectly and does not have any changes and it just flows, then he moves on to the next paragraph. And the process continues and continues. And then he goes through and this is like typically about 3 weeks out from being on stage that all of this is starting and taking place. And then the final week, he is practicing the speech 2 to sometimes 5 times a day. He'll practice it in the morning and then he'll go, I've got it. I just missed a couple of words, but I'm almost there. And then there's times where, we're on the trade show floor and he'll go, I'm going to step away and go practice real quick. And then he comes back and he goes, I've got it. I just need 2 more times. And he goes, I'm going to go step away again and I'm going to go practice.
It's interesting. You know, I listened to like Kraig spoke after, you know, I kind of did an introduction to Kraig. He spoke at Connect.
So real quick,
And
how far off?
it was close. It probably practiced it more than that. And there's a lot about Kraig, his presentation, a little bit longer, very relaxed kind of PowerPoint deal. And that's generally not my, I can do that in like an hour maybe, but in a short, I try to get as much as I can in the time that I've been allotted, you know, and try to follow the kind of 3 points, try to do some stories and kind of stuff like that. So, I really prepare, really try to make everything right. Too afraid to get up with more relaxed, kind of like Kraig did. So that's kind of piece. I think this year I'm really going to be focused. I'll give people a teaser. People come up to me. One of the things, you know, we're real big fans of CPSN. I think if, you know, you've got to be doing that. If you're not doing that, what do you think you're going to be, right? What are you going to do? And we have a lot of people come up on the trade show floor and we'll ask, hey, are you in CPSN? And occasionally you'll get people who are like, yeah, I'm thinking about getting out. They haven't done anything. They're not doing anything for me. And what I'm going to talk about at NCPA is that's wrong. You need to be thinking about what you've done for them, right? We can't make anything happen unless a whole lot of people do it. So, you know, it comes a lot, it's kind of cheesy day when you say it, but kind of back to your JFK, you know, ask not what your country's done for you, you know, what you've done for your country. And so, you know, we've got to change a mindset, right? If your CPSN chapter in your state's not doing anything, that means they need your help. They need you to be involved. You need to call them up and say, what can I do? And that's going to be kind of it's going to be kind of a participation message with a couple of examples on why they need to become more active. Maybe talk about what happened when a bunch of Pioneer people called Caremark at the same time, that kind of deal.
Yeah, and we'll get to that on this podcast. So just a little teaser for this podcast. One of the podcasts I listened to, and I have to be honest, when I looked at the list of podcasts, I'm like, which one do I probably need to look at the most or listen to the most, but don't really want to? And it was the one on e-care plans, and Josh did it. I don't know if it's in the Catalyst. It's in the Catalyst family. It may be
I know which one you're talking about. So we kind of did like an internal podcast where Will, who does our podcast Beyond the Scripts,
Josh. That was Beyond
interviewed
the Script.
Josh Howland about e-scripts.
Yeah, it was good. It was really good. And I say it was hard, you know, when I picked, because, you know, I love talking about marketing for pharmacies. I love talking about getting paid for services, but the process of, you know, the filling out the e-care plan is just, you know, I've got people on staff. Kurt on my staff does a great job of that. Yep. I know how important it is. I know how essential it is. But as far as like voluntarily listening to an hour on it, doesn't flip my switch. This was a really good podcast. People should listen to it. And it ties into something you just said, Jeff, as far as, build it and they will come. Josh made the point that pharmacists will say, well, I'll start sending e-care plans when I start getting paid for it.
Yep.
And he made a good point. Then you're never going to get paid for it. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
So, I mean, sounds like a little bit of a sermon, but
no, it's just true.
He's right.
CPSN is a tool. If you're not use the tool to get better, stop dreaming of change and change. You know, that's that.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to know specifically which Beyond the Scripts episode that was episode 32.
Okay.
If anybody else wants to listen about Josh Howland and Will Tuff talk about e-care plans.
Yeah, no, it was, and it talked about more stuff than that, but it was like I said, I had to kind of force myself to do it, but once I got started, it was an easy listen, good listen.
There's a theme there in the world of business that I think we struggle with, and it ties to what you asked Jeff on presentations. Great speakers prepare tons, right? When you're going through college, they tell you spend 3 hours out of class for every hour you're spending in class. When you're playing a sport, you practice 6-7 days a week for an hour. Then you go into the world of business or run your own business, and you're literally playing the game the whole time, and you're never practicing.
Nice.
And And
I like that.
I
like
really
that
think
a
that's
lot.
a problem or challenge with a lot of small business owners. We spend our whole time playing the game and not practicing to get better.
I'm going to use that in my speech. It may or may not credit you.
Well, I probably don't deserve it because I probably stole it ruthlessly from somebody else that was
No, that's
educating
good.
me.
That was good.
Okay, diving in. So, Marsha, this one's for you.
Oh, okay.
Last podcast, we talked about
The bromance.
We did talk about bromance, but we're not going there right now.
Okay.
But do
Thank you.
keep that. We're going on the customer support.
Okay.
So, you mentioned on the last call, and we talked a little bit about challenges with hiring people, and which is true across the country.
Yes.
And Pioneer is experiencing some of that. So, as you guys know, I try to do some homework here, go out to a handful of members, ask them their experience. This time I looked on some Google reviews and things like that, which Google reviews can be helpful, or they can be unhelpful. But what's the status of customer support? Because I did hear some feedback that it's still a little slow. That the help desk product's awesome, but some of the help desk support has been spotty. Is that right or unfair? What's the status?
Fair. So, Great Resignation affected us as it affected multiple of our customers. And another thing that we learned is that, with the Great Resignation, there were several companies who were offering work from home, which made hiring in an office much, much harder. And with our office in Shreveport, it became more difficult because you ever heard you're familiar with the term of, hey, there's fewer fish in the pond. So we've depleted the resources in Shreveport. And so then we came to Dallas when we opened this office, and we're we're in a much more competitive market. And then, of course, you add in the pandemic that offered work from home for people who are like, okay, well, I don't want to be here. I'd rather, this job's going to let me work from home for the same money or a little less. And so as people are being drawn back into their offices, and we're able to, we've had to kind of the pool's gotten shallow, so we've had to go more broad with our search and our job offers. And so RedSail invested a lot of money into us, which was announced at Connect, into helping us grow support and making it back to the wonderful it was. And so far, we've gotten our callback times back down to 2 minutes. I think there was one day that, it did get up to 20, but I think that was because something was down.
Yeah, I would say we're back. We invested about $2 million in getting that. We had ratios that we used, and we invested about $2 million to bring those ratios down so that you could handle turnover. And so our response times are back down to exactly where they should be in the 2 to 3 minutes. And a matter of fact, some of them are way ahead.
And that's really the lesson we had to learn, which is if you can't totally stem the turnover slide, and we're a lot better at that, then you've got to then assume increased training time and increased time to excellence. And that ends up being more expensive. So it's costing us about 20% more to provide that same level of service that we did. But now we're there again. And, there are 2 or 3 things that I think are secret sauce for Pioneer. That's one of them. So we'll over-invest there always if that's what we need to get those metrics where we need to get them. One of the things coming out of this pandemic is I think most industries are going to be in a state of, for lack of a better word, artificially high turnover rates with employees. And when you're dealing with that, what we're learning is we need to then make sure we adjust our productivity ratios, because you're going to have a steeper learning curve for employees, because you've got on average a younger employee base, a less tenured employee base, and it's a longer time to excellence. So you're gonna have to overhire to compensate for that and build tools and processes in place.
Yep.
And so what we've learned is we had to increase by about 20% of our historical ratios to get back to where the service was what we're used to delivering, what customers are expecting.
And something I'm going to point out here real quick. As far as, not just our support, but I mean, RedSail took several notes on how we manage our support, and they were able to help improve QS1 support. And that recently came back and showing in the latest direct opinion survey. And so I would say that support, yes, had its struggles during the pandemic and the Great Resignation, but we've invested millions and we're back and better than ever, baby.
The number of questions that you're getting to the help desk, or the type of questions that you're getting to the help desk, have those changed, or how have they changed? What kind of questions do you typically get?
I think they're typical.
The number one question is always claims volume. Claims related is the number one call volume topic, and that hasn't changed necessarily. But I think you also see, and Jeff, please chime in. You also see that the equal and opposite force within the customer base, right? As customers are dealing with higher turnover as well, they're in the same training challenges we're having, so you get more calls coming in from folks that aren't quite as experienced using the system as well, and we've got to that's our responsibility to deal with it. But you do see an increase in that for sure as well.
Yeah, I would say it's healthy, and we're really investing even more in training. For the first year ever, we took 10 account managers to Connect and had them go through the advanced, kind of the black belt classes that are at Connect. And they've gone back with recordings of those classes to teach the other account managers. So we're not just trying to solve problems, we're actually trying to help pharmacies find solutions. And we're back to being, one of the things when we're short-staffed that we stopped doing is what we call success calls. That's where we find something the customer's doing wrong, and we call them and say, hey, we see that you have some package size mismatched, or we say you have some claims that you reverse that have gone out to the customer, and we help them, and our success calls are back up because we're able to do the success calls now. So I would say we're much healthier there.
Good. So Kraig, you'd mentioned, I think on the podcast and maybe in your remarks at the Pioneer Conference about the investment that RedSail's putting into Pioneer. So one of the areas that you also talked about at the Pioneer Conference was medical billing.
Yep.
You just made an acquisition a couple months ago on medical billing. Tell us more about that. Medical billing is such an important part and a growing important part for independents. How are you making it easy for independents to bill on the medical side?
Yeah, so the first thing, we purchased TransactRx, and TransactRx is known for providing physician offices access to pharmacy billing for scripts. What a lot of folks didn't realize is they built that platform from the ground up in the cloud and really got their start in medical billing for pharmacies. And so they had a lot of that capability, but for business focus reasons as a small company, they're focusing more on physician practice offices. We particularly liked the scalability and configurability of the platform, and because of how they architected it. And as a result, believe that we can integrate it more, because what you've been missing is something that's truly integrated and automated within the pharmacy management system. So you'll see in the coming months some iterations that we're doing within the Pioneer system to not only automate the documentation in the front end, but also to try to close the black hole of reconciliation with a lot of the medical billing functionality on the back end. And so you'll see that coming out fairly rapidly over the next 60, 90 days with the first revs. And then what we'll do is continue to build out the rules engine for the actual medical billing procedures. We'll be the first to say that the iteration 1 with TransactRx is really vaccine billing. And now we're going to spend the next 4 months billing out the rest of the ICD codes with it. But it's a dramatically more configurable solution and helps us answer the real big problem we felt, which is it's expensive to get into it. And we're trying to solve that problem. So take away some of the upfront investment in workload and time by automating some of that, and then truly embedding it into the workflow. And so we're doing that work right now. And so it's out in quite a few Pioneer sites, but we'll really start launching that in earnest as vaccine season's starting to roll out. Jeff, anything you want to add to that?
No, that was I think to emphasize there that TransactRx had done DME billing for pharmacy and other medical billing for pharmacy in the past, and just based on business decision and what was most profitable, they had focused on vaccinations, especially during the pandemic. And so those will be services they'll be able to turn back on very rapidly. So it was a really good ability to invest in a company that was small enough you didn't have to pay a whole lot, but they had really good core technology to build upon. And
I mean, our theme, whether it be medical billing or pharmacy-based billing, we re-architected Powerline. Powerline's now up in the cloud. It's brand new architecture. Our view of the whole industry around the billing side, whether it be medical or pharmacy, is that pharmacists and pharmacies having to rely on literally code that was written 30 years ago. And as we were looking around the market, Transact was the one that we thought was the most compelling as it comes to an architecture for the future. And so we see those two technologies merging from a rules engine standpoint, and then integrating more deeply into pharmacy workflow with Pioneer.
Well, there was just a timely deal that I wanted to hit, and I think this really applies to us. He mentioned Powerline, and where you see, Doug, the United change. I think I think the trial's over, right? I think we're waiting to hear what happens. I think that affects us as a company, Powerline, because I think a lot of people probably don't want their stuff switching through their PBM. How do you see that going? Did you follow the trial, or do you have any?
We continue to be vocally opposed to it. We sent there's an op-ed from our general counsel that was published on Friday in opposition to it because of the impact on independent pharmacies. We are definitely opposed to it. As far as trying to crystal ball it, it's hard to read. I mean, in the past, the FTC has basically approved every merger they've seen. This is a Department of Justice issue, so it's not FTC. I am hopeful they'll see the light, but I'm not going to bet the farm.
So is this was a trial? Was this a judge trial? Is that? Or is this more like a hearing, like a government hearing?
The government sued to block the merger, and so it was a judge. And so the judge can rule for the government, which would be the way we'd want them to in this case, or they can rule for United Health Change to let the merger go forward. And
so if they rule to let it go forward, then it goes forward. There's not another step to block it. That's the last deal.
That's my understanding. I mean, then it's a business deal for them, the two parties, to work it out, which it seems like the two parties are going to work it out. So that's my understanding, is that if the judge says it's okay to go forward, it's okay to go forward.
When do you think we'll know?
Between now and October.
Okay.
It's a guess. Another guess. When the judge rules.
Okay.
When the judge feels like it.
Yeah.
Well, you have a lot of you have a lot of history about how those things go. I was just curious, and your guess is probably better than my guess.
Yeah.
It's a guess, but we think it's bad for independent pharmacy, for the PBM to have access to all of those data. We don't think it's conducive. It's good for patients and healthcare, and we think a lot of our members feel the same way. When we get into medical billing, because pharmacists are continuing to grow, I mean, maybe even taking a step back from medical billing, why do we care about medical billing? Why is RedSail, Pioneer getting to that? And that is a question, but I want to just preempt it a bit by saying that pharmacists providing primary care services
absolutely
is continuing to grow. But let me pause and let you guys answer that question of, why do you guys care about medical billing? Are you seeing a lot of demand from pharmacies, or is this one where you're trying to get in front of it? What's the story behind your interest in medical billing?
So from a RedSail standpoint, if you take it at its highest level, our whole mission that we state is to create a technology platform and network that enables the most clinically advanced and financially sustainable pharmacy network in the country. That's our mission. Pioneer obviously feeds directly into that with saving and revitalizing independent pharmacy. So at its highest level, we formed a view when we created RedSail that for pharmacies to be successful, pharmacists needed to become more primary care venues than not. Well, why do we think that? Well, because if you look at your independent pharmacy, if an independent pharmacy isn't diversifying their revenue streams outside of simply filling and billing, you're not going to be an independent pharmacy for too long. And so from our vantage point, it's not only there's an economic element to it, where as we continue to establish pharmacists as those that can provide care, it's good for pharmacy. The second reason is it's good for our communities. They're stating what we all know. Not only do pharmacists provide really good care, our country needs them to, because there's not enough primary care physicians, even if we said we didn't want pharmacists to do that. So I think it's from our lens, it's the intersection of economic health for pharmacies and health for the communities is why we're doing it.
Yeah, and there certainly is a demand from and there's demand. When you look at the kind of pharmacies that buy Pioneer, they're progressive. They're trying to grow their pharmacy, and they want to bill for more medical services. They want to perform more medical services to be more clinical, but you can't do that unless you can bill it. And we think billing was too complicated. When we were talking about RedSail buying us, one of our things was we need to buy a medical biller. I said, hey, we need to find, my idea was to find someone who was doing billing services for a physician who, there are companies out there that the physicians outsource their billing. So they really understand it all. We did much better than that because we got somebody with really good technology. Those people wouldn't necessarily have good technology.
There's also a demand element for it. If you look at our installed base pre-COVID, you use easy numbers. At that point, roughly 20% of the installed base was capable in doing medical billing procedures. You go to the middle of the pandemic, that doubled. You go to now, and it's well over 65% of the customer base that's capable of doing it. Not happy with what the solutions are, but they're doing it. And those that came online just through the pandemic, you can see through the claims analysis that they're continuing on. That was a good thing for clinical practice of pharmacy, so to speak, and that they continued on doing procedures other than just COVID vaccines now that the infrastructure is in place.
Yeah, how often does a CPSN talk to some particular payer and they decide, hey, yeah, we should do this thing and this would improve blank. And then it's like, oh, but how are we going to bill it? How are we going to pay for it? Oh, well, this over here is too hard. Let's do this thing out of bandwidth over here, and we'll just check these boxes. And so we got to have that base platform where once they decide, hey, they want to do something, it needs to be easy. Oh, yeah, no problem. We got the easy button to how you get paid, how we transfer the money.
Is there so someone listening to this saying, hey, I've been hearing about different forms of medical billing for all of my pharmacy career. Let's just say it's a pharmacist listening to this, and he or she says, yeah, I've been listening to this all my career, but where are the opportunities? Been out of school for 15, 20, 30, 40 years. Where are the opportunities? I mean, I know how I would answer that, but I'm interested in how you guys would answer that.
Well, hopefully we'd answer it the same way you do. Go state to state. You're getting more and more opportunities all the time. Prescriptive authority for flu, the diagnosis and do flu. You have people who are taking what they did with COVID vaccination and saying, crap, we should be doing all the vaccines. Can't believe we weren't doing this already. And expanding that. Most of those pay better on the medical billing side because they pay you for your service in addition to
get
just
inventive,
the medication.
Like Tim Mitchell, who did a vaccine clinic in the parking lot of his church and put it out on social media, and everybody shared it, and they did several hundred vaccines. Get creative. Don't ask who's going to help me do this.
Yeah, Kraig.
I would say vaccines in total. We just kicked off a shingles program.
Mm-hmm.
We did a pilot of it, and then are in full rollout of it now. And medical billing is an important piece. The e-care plans that you were talking about, and I understand, you don't have to spend the hour studying it, but those that were using e-care plans effectively during the pilot were delivering 50% more shingle vaccines than they were a year ago. The control group that wasn't was delivering 20% less than they were a year ago. 45,000 patients that we piloted. And most of that was driven by the efficiency with which we were building the tools and triggers into the e-care plan, in Jeff's word, to make it the easy button. And that easy button translates into a heck of a lot more revenue. Although I also concede one of the things we need to start putting a light on and can help with medical billing is the reimbursement distribution for all the vaccines is fairly substantial, not only within a state, but within a pharmacy. And some of that's driven by the rules engines of medical billing, making sure you're getting the documentation right. Some of it's just driven by the plans, and we need to start shining a light on that for the customers as well.
I think that'd be good information to have. Go ahead, Jeff.
And I know, Doug, you're looking puzzled. How did creating a care plan help them become more efficient? How did documentation help them be more efficient? And that's our implementation of care plans that includes actions, could include steps in the plan that can trigger things at the point of sale. So specifically, this would trigger, that care plan had an action step that would trigger a printout and then trigger a pop-up at the point of sale where the point of sale clerk has to say, hey, pharmacists come over, yeah, they came over, or no, we refused to, or no. And so it's the implementation of how we integrate in the documentation of the care plan in the pharmacy workflow that drove up that productivity. So don't be thinking, guys out there, just anybody goes and gets software that has a care plan on it, the documentation is going to make them more efficient. It's actually how you implement that.
You also have to have the intelligence built into the rules engine for making sure we're being as efficient as possible on teeing up the patients that you should be spending pharmacy time with doing that. And we'll roll that out for all the vaccines, and we'll roll that out for several other medical billing opportunities. But I think that's where it starts. If I were starting, I'd start with vaccines.
Yeah, one thing on that e-care plan podcast that Josh did, one of the things that I thought resonated with me was, so every pharmacist knows how to do SOAP notes. If you know how to do SOAP notes, don't think of the e-care plan today. Think of it as a running biography of the patient, not like that acute moment in time when in pharmacy school we had to do a SOAP note. Think about it as an acute moment in time, and your pharmacy management system is keeping those notes for you. Yep. So it's that resonated with me.
Thank you for watching the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode,
please like, subscribe, and follow us wherever you get your podcast.
Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts to help us reach more pharmacy professionals like you.